Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the sixth and final in this season of the Who Report, the show that talks about Doctor Who and has more Doctor Who content than you can poke a tractator at. I'm your host, Aaron, and this is my co-host, Greg King. How are you going tonight, Greg?
Hi, everybody. I'm really good, Aaron. Thank you very much. Good to see you. How's things?
Good to see you too. I've been super busy greeting Earthlings. It's been a busy day for me, a busy week, a busy month. So every time anyone asks, I'm just busy. But we're not talking about that tonight. We're here to talk about Doctor Who, wall-to-wall Doctor Who, solid all night. Even the head of the Star Trek fan club, Colin Parkinson, is here. That's a bit of a defection, isn't it? Good evening to you too. So being in the era of new Doctor Who, there's a lot of news and a lot of interesting things happening at the moment, and we're going to jump straight into it because there's a bit of stuff happening around the internet and online. So we're looking at some of the news, and some of it follows on from what we were talking about last week. We were talking about how popular the new issue of Doctor Who magazine was, Greg, and did you see online that it had actually sold out?
I didn't realize it had been sold out, but I did hear that it was being scalped on eBay. So I thought, gee, that suggests that perhaps there's not as many copies out there as we might have liked.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a bit later in the eBay report with the master, but I thought I brought it up here just because it was big news. And what it actually says to me is the circulation got down so low recently because a lot of people just gave up on it, that the fandom was there to buy it and there was just no reason for them to buy it. And now it's sort of gone through a regeneration, and within a week of it coming out, the issue has sold out, and as you said, is being scalped online. That really bodes well for me for the new era of Doctor Who, because it kind of means that there is a fan base waiting for this stuff and waiting for the product that they wanted. It's just for the last couple of years, the BBC haven't been putting out the product that they wanted.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably a good sign. Unfortunate for those that might miss out, but the fact that it's sold out means that obviously people are clamoring now for information about the upcoming new series.
And the great thing about living in Australia is we're 3 months behind, so we'll be able to get the get it at the newsagents the day it comes out if you keep an eye out for it and not have to buy the second-hand scalper prices online.
Well, that's basically what I plan to do. I'm happy to wait, so I'll just grab it from the newsagent, hoping that the newsagents will still be getting them in as they generally have been.
Before we go on, I see you're wearing a green T-shirt there. What have you got this week?
I had to. I wore this one again, and I had to wear this because we have a representative from the Crinoid Approved Society joining us tonight. So I had to wear the shirt as well.
It's great to see that he's got a big smile there as well. I haven't seen the Crinoid costume in person for quite a while, but he's got quite a bit of fan history in Victorian fandom. He goes right back to 80s, doesn't he?
That's right. He first made an appearance back in 87, I think, or 88, around that sort of end of the 80s anyway, sometime then.
I do remember a costume parade where I think the Crinoid won, and I think there was a Mavellan in it and a couple of other really good costumes. I have a friend here tonight too.
Yeah,
I think Davros trumps Crinoid, I think, just by the number of episodes he's been in. We do have a bit of a collection and a bit of memorabilia behind us, and maybe in the future we might be able to share some of it. We hope everyone's enjoyed the stuff we've had in the background behind us during these episodes as well. I know a lot of people who watch are avid collectors too, so we do try and change the displays a bit to make them interesting week to week. But jumping back into the news, there's been some casting news today. I don't know if you saw Miriam McGonagall was cast as, we don't know what, but she said she's joined the cast of Doctor Who. And this is one of those things I think we're going to continue seeing. We're getting more and more sort of, I guess, esteemed actors and famous actors join. And one of the things I was thinking, and we touched on it last week, with the Disney money, if we could have anyone we could choose, or perfect actors, who would you choose to be in Doctor Who?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, I guess any of the modern actors that we see in a lot of the contemporary movies. People like Chris Pratt, for example. I've enjoyed him in the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World stuff, and
Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't think you can drop anyone into Doctor Who. It is one of those things where I think they do have to have something whoish about them, and being in Jurassic World and also the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that's really good sort of nerd cred to have to be in a series like Doctor Who.
exactly, yeah.
So, and I think the one thing when I think about who would you put in Doctor Who, I still keep going back to Doctor Who is British. So even when I'm looking at like the A-list celebrity Hollywood actors, I do tend to like the British ones. This isn't because I'm racist or anything. I just think Doctor Who is inherently British. That said, when we've had our Kylie Minogues and when we've had our other big actors from overseas, it is nice, I think it is, to have people who might draw someone in to watch the show that wouldn't normally watch just because they're a fan of a celebrity. Russell T Davies in the past and Phil Coulson, they're big fans of Coronation Street and soap operas, so they've often done things in a soap opera way to get the audience coming along. I think Benedict Cumberbatch would also be particularly good. I didn't put him on the list I put together just because he's worked with Moffat and he was Sherlock, but I totally agree. He is someone. Here's some of the ones that I thought would be good. Tom Holland. Everyone thinks, oh no, Spider-Man, but I don't know if you've ever heard Tom Holland in interviews where he is British, and he does such a good American accent. A lot of people are shocked when they hear him, and I don't know if you choose him as a doctor or something like that, but I think he would be a good guest, a good solid guest actor, maybe a scientist that helps the doctor or someone from the future on a colony or something like that. Do you like Tom?
Yeah, I enjoyed Tom's work, and I agree. These would be people that would come in just probably for one story, and they would be the major character, the major character, whether they are a villain or even someone that helps the Doctor in the story. I wouldn't imagine them being cast as the Doctor as such.
Henry Cavill would be another great one. Did you see the new June movie?
I haven't seen that one yet. No.
It is one to check out, and one of the young stars of that was Timothy Chalamet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Yes, Liam Neeson definitely has a special set of skills. He would be another great young actor to be in Doctor Who, and he had a lot of weight for his age as well. Where in June you could see he really was a great genre sci-fi character, taking on one of the leads of that. So I think he could have been someone that would jump over as well. And he's got one of those names where he isn't a huge Hollywood star. He's got a lot of cred behind him with the BAFTAs and things like that. And he'd also be, I think, really good in the material. So that's two of the young actors, Tom and Timothy, but also to not be ageist, I thought of another two there, Liam Neeson, who is Irish, and Anthony Hopkins, who is Welsh. Now, I don't know, you could mix and match, but wouldn't Anthony Hopkins be an absolutely stunning master if they went for, the older, more evil master?
Well, I was just thinking Anthony Hopkins, yeah, he's got to be a villain of some sort, but indeed the master, yes.
Well, when we had Professor Yana with Derek Jacobi, and he regenerated into a master, and we only had him for such a short time before he turned into John Sim. Anthony Hopkins version of that kind of master, I think, would be absolutely fantastic. A very calculated and very intellectual evil master, rather than the sort of skittish jumping about maniacal master we've had with the last kind of regenerations. More of a scheming Delgado type master, I think, would be a great thing to get back to in the future if they ever went that way again.
One other actor I was thinking of just quickly was also Michael Caine, although I don't know, does he still act these days? But
Michael Caine, the last thing I really remember him in was probably the Batman movies as Alfred. and he was still great in that. And again, he is one of those actors that is globally successful, has been in acting as long as I can remember. I mean, back to the 60s, and would be one of those British icons that would be interesting to turn up in Doctor Who. We've talked about actors, but if we look at some of the actresses that are sort of the hot properties at the moment, there's a few that I think would be great in Doctor Who. I don't know if you know Florence Pugh. She was Black Widow's sister, and she was in a great horror movie called Midsummer. I think she would be a great companion, or even a great master if they decided to do the gender switch again, because I think she's so versatile in the role she plays. Have you thought of any actresses?
Yeah, I loved her character in Black Widow, and yeah, I could see her playing something in Doctor Who. That'd be great. One I was thinking of was maybe Natalie Portman.
I think Natalie Portman would be good. I don't know if she would ever do science fiction again after Star Wars, but she's definitely one of those actresses that has, I guess, the sci-fi cred, but a lot of acting cred from different roles she's been in, and would be a great asset if they ever did have her in Doctor Who. I don't know if you know Kirian Shipka, who was Sabrina the Teenage Witch in the recent Netflix series. And when I watched that did have a very international cast, including Michelle Gomez as the Master. I thought she would almost be a great Master's companion if they went down the track of having someone travel with the Master, where she did quite good and evil in different episodes that she was in. We've also got Zendaya there, who is, I think, still Tom Holland's girlfriend. They're both in the Spider-Man movies together. And the way Russell T Davies has been casting the companions, I could see she would be absolutely perfect for the type of companion they're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I think she'd be great as a companion.
Kate Winslet is doing so we're going to look at that as well, because that's really interesting. And Russell, there's a couple of comments you've had that we'll look at in the show as well. And lastly, I put up Anya Taylor-Joy, who I followed her career since a horror movie called The Witch, where she was a little girl who was absolutely fantastic in that. And she's been in M. Night Shyamalan's Split as one of the girls that was abducted. And she's also been in, was it The White Queen, the Netflix series about chess? And she's currently in a horror movie called The Menu, which comes out, which is with Liam Neeson as well. So if you got her and Liam Neeson, it could be a reunion on screen on Doctor Who. I don't know if she would consider herself too big for Doctor Who now. Who knows? But they are some of my wish list if I could cast anyone at the moment to be in Doctor Who. And anyone who wants to put anything up in the comments, it's really interesting to see what other people's opinions are for this kind of thing too.
I guess that's the thing you mentioned. Would she want to be in something like Doctor Who? Is she too big for it? I guess what Disney wants is for Doctor Who to become the big thing.
It is. So I guess all of these kind of actors and actresses are on the table. The one big one that I've heard, refused to be in Doctor Who was Christopher Lee, who, it amazes me because he was just in about everything from, the Hammer movies to Space 1999 and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. But he talked quite, down of being in Doctor Who, and was surprised his friend Peter Cushing was in it, like in a silly kid show, like, why did you lower yourself to that to be in the two movies? So that was, he's passed away now, but he was someone I thought would have been fantastic in Doctor Who as well. But there obviously are some people who think the wobbly sets are just too bad for their career. They can now finally afford Peter Jackson to direct. That's true, although he asked for a screen-used BBC Dalek as his fee, and they took him one over, and he didn't direct an episode. So I don't know what happened there. You are never too big for Doctor Who. I keep eating, so maybe I will be at some point. Yes. So there's other news, and this sort of news goes over to our Web of Fear thing, which we look at comments that people have been coming up with online. And the big one, well, I guess it's not one of the big news, but one of the little pieces of news that has come out this week is that the Daleks, the bronze Daleks that have been the cornerstone of evil in the galaxy since Russell T Davies introduced them in 2005, are being retired, and the Daleks are being redesigned.
I think this is big news. This is big news.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, for me, it's not the biggest news, but it's generated a lot of debate online because everyone has an idea of how the Daleks should look. Do you think this is a good idea?
Look, yeah, this a fascinating area, and I agree it generates a lot of interest. Look, my feeling is I can understand them wanting to maybe go for something different, make a change. But there's a problem whereby if they make too much of a change, they'll end up going down the path of the paradigm Daleks, which of course most Doctor Who fans didn't like, myself included, because they tried to change them too much. That's where the original, the bronze ones that they made for the new series were good, because they didn't significantly change the general look and proportions of the classic Dalek. So what more can they? So I'm thinking, well, what can they do though to change it but keep the look? I just don't know. I'm very curious to see what they end up.
Maybe add a CD player, but I think they have to be careful, because I think the Dalek pretty much has to have the same silhouette, and as you can work within that. And there have been times when they've totally changed the Daleks and it's worked. I don't know anyone who hates the movie versions from the 60s, and they were big and colourful. And when they've introduced, I guess, support Daleks for the standard Daleks, everyone's loved them. So they introduced the Gunner Dalek, and everyone thought that was great. And the big domed Emperor that turned out to be Davros, I can't remember anyone complaining about that. Everyone loved the 60s Emperor Dalek. I think, though, when you look at the Daleks that have worked, they look like they all come from the same society, and they're all designed the same way. As soon as they changed them into the big Teletubby colourful Daleks in the new series, I think people just said that's too modern and changed too much, and that's why it didn't work.
What did you think of the ones that they brought in for Jodie's era? I didn't mind that so much, mainly because they weren't a replacement for the main Daleks.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I have the same opinion. I didn't mind them. I didn't love them. I didn't hate them. And that seems to be the same opinion of most people, where they're like, all right, I suppose they weren't as bad as the last redesign, but they're not as good as what, we've got with the bronze one. So I think they have to be very careful. I wouldn't mind if, I think a couple of people have said it, if they basically use the bronze one but go back to the 60s colors. So you might have the same basic Dalek design but have the silver and blue ones and the red Supremes and black ones and stuff like that. I do think this is more of a to generate news story than we're totally radicalizing the Daleks and changing them, and there's going to be spider Daleks and tripod Dalek. I don't think that is going to happen. Although maybe I will be eating my words in a couple of months' time. Who knows?
Something else I was thinking, and they could go back to even say the classic Genesis look, for example, but make them a bit more, polish them off, so we don't see rivets and we don't see screws and things like that, and make them look just a bit more flash. But they are essentially that classic era Dalek.
I like what Bob said. I like what Shane said as well about the different designs and hoverboats and stuff. And the one thing I do like with the new series, we saw it in Asylum of the Daleks, and we saw it in The Witch's Familiar. And when you have all different Daleks mixed up from other eras, no one complains. Everyone loves seeing the old styles and the different styles together, and they do indeed work, I think. So you have that. I think you have that thing with Doctor Who. If they redesign the Daleks, and again everyone goes, well, they're a bit crap, they just forget it and go back to the old ones next series. They just go down to the exhibitions and go, we gave these to your exhibitions. We just need them back for the series because we're going to be using them again. So there's always that opportunity with Doctor Who. Yeah. So I think
I did like how they gave us that nod back to the classic era. So it's not like the new Who has thrown out all the old stuff, everything's redesigned, let's go, rah, rah, rah. They acknowledged the old, well, with the Daleks, we saw the old classic era ones back, and even the Cybermen, they acknowledged the, was it the Invasion version or the Revenge version? So I did like when they did that in New Who.
Yeah, I do think when they tip their hat to the designs of the old monsters by having a head in a display case, it is respectful, and then they can just go and do what they want, and it's their era, to be honest. But this leads us into our Web of Fear section of the show this week, where I scale the web and look for the more interesting comments and feedbacks to different stories that are doing the news this week. And the first one is on the Dalek redesign, because all over the internet, people were like, I don't want them changed. I want them back as the originals. I would like them to stay the same. So maybe, Greg, if you could lend us
Let
your
me
dulcet
read the
to read.
comments.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ross says, make it look like it's living inside the casing with liquid oozing around the balls, and make them look more grotesque. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Well, I
It
don't
is.
know about oozing around the balls, but I don't know. We could see a bit more of the organic Dalek inside, maybe through clear panels or something.
I don't think we can have oozing around the balls if it's going to be shown at a 5:30
That's
time
right.
slot. But we have had the clear Daleks where you can see the mutant inside before,
Mm,
and I
mm.
think that is a grotesque and a body horror thing that they could do in the new series even better. I don't think they really have, apart from Dalek Sec, and that wasn't nearly as mutant as the old style ones used to be.
So Philip Wright says, in my opinion, I love the looks of these guys. Just need a little bit of an update. So he's got the Imperial Daleks there from one of the latest stories.
Probably Remembrance
I
or
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
a revelation. But
So
they were a unique color scheme that hasn't been revisited in the new series. I don't know if there were even any of those colors in the Witches Familiar on Scarrow, though I might be wrong.
Personally, I don't particularly like that color scheme. I mean, it looks flash, but I'm all for the old greys and things from the the Genesis and the Planet of the Daleks versions.
Do you know what is one of the great things about Daleks, which is why they're so popular? There have been so many different colors and so many different variants that everyone grew up with one that they have as a favorite. And that's why I think there's so much debate on this topic, because
Yes.
if you grew up in the 60s, you loved the silver and blue ones. And as soon as they changed them, you hated it. And if you grew up in the 70s, you probably loved the gunmetal gray and the gold Supremes and things like that, because they looked well art and they were the ones that you grew up with. And then when you got to the 80s and you started getting the cream and gold ones, they probably were great for people growing up them. I thought they were fantastic, especially when the Gunner Dalek turned up. But if you're looking for imposing, menacing colors, you don't go for cream and gold, do you?
That's right. Yeah, no, agreed, and absolutely. Of course, 70s was my era, so indeed, that's why that's my favourite. The Daleks from that time are my favourites.
And on that last slide, I found it interesting that our show was actually getting discussed on the Bendigo Who page as well, where
Yeah.
someone posted a screen cap.
So, in fact, Michael himself says, just watch the Who report number 5. It looks like we now have an Australian Doctor Who, of course, referring to himself as the Doctor, who we referred to in the show. So,
there you go. We've gone viral.
That's right.
Yes.
So now a couple more comments. Ross says it's time to return to the classic look, but a more organic feel of the Daleks. So yeah, that gets back to what we were just talking about. And Russell Devlin says, as long as they aren't the fat B Daleks. Yeah, I think we know what he's referring to there.
I think I don't think they'll go back to those ones, but there you go. So I think that's enough Dalek talk for this week, though. Now, this picture surfaced online, and it was a picture of the special effects for the filming of the final parts of Power of the Doctor. Did you want to go through that one, mate?
Yeah, so David Rushing says, oh, wow, no wonder that shot looked fake. It was. Joshua says, what are the odds that he would land exactly in front of that green screen?
I know. The TARDIS always takes the Doctor where he needs to go.
That's right, and he needed a bit of green there. And that does get the Crinoid thumbs up of approval, by the way.
Excellent.
Green. Beck says DT added the teeth line, and it's like it's 2008 again. And Matt says, I don't care about anything else in the show. David is back. Let's go.
And it's great to see, again, the comments being mainly positive on the net, because we've had 5 years of very negative comments. So it is great that fandom is coming back the other way, I think. So it's been fun reading some of the different comments on different news stories that have come up the last couple of weeks.
Indeed, and I agree. The last few years have been challengingly negative. It's good to see the surge of positivity now.
It is. And talking about a surge of positivity, this isn't exactly a Doctor Who news story, but it's close enough that it would be fantastic if we did get Kate Winslet to be in Doctor Who. For those people who don't know, Russell T Davies basically discovered Kate Winslet in one of her first TV appearances. It was a series called The Dark Season. And this is some of the news that's just hit about that.
All right, so Matthew says, in an extraordinary feat, Big Finish has gotten Kate Winslet as she reunites with Russell T Davies for the Big Finish sequel series to Dark Season, the TV series Davies created and Winslet was in as a young actress. Aaron, have you seen that particular show? I haven't seen it.
I saw it years and years ago, and I've always meant to revisit it. But as with everything in life, I just don't have enough time. But if I found a copy of it, and I'd definitely buy it and definitely check it out. I do remember it as being quite a good children's show.
Yeah, I'm fascinated that Kate Winslet was in it as in her early part of her career, by the sound of things. So
yeah.
Anyway, next comment. Oh my God, beyond exciting. This is epic. So obviously there are people excited about this.
Yeah.
And some chap called Philip Nichols says,
do you know what I've heard that Phil Nichols might actually be the president of the Doctor Who Club of Victoria.
And Phil says, have the original series of Dark Season on DVD has been collecting Russell T Davies shows. So again, yeah, I might have to look this up and have a look at it. I hadn't heard of it before, so it's piqued my curiosity.
I don't remember it ever being screened in Australia. I watched a video copy of it. It must be more than 20 years ago. It was one of those classic British after-school supernatural sort of shows that I would have loved as a kid, and I loved when I saw it. I thought it was a really good show, but I can't remember much about it. Obviously, if they're going back to it after so many years, and Kate Winslet's doing it with Big Finish, which must be probably the biggest coup they've had to attract. Big Finish, for everyone who's watching knows, does the original Doctor Who plays every 3 or 4 times a month at the moment. So it's great to see that they've got such star power for such an independent and unique label that's basically producing radio shows, which isn't a big genre anymore.
Yeah, no, it's all very, very interesting. As I say, I'll have to look it up myself.
Yeah. So we're moving on from the web of fear to the destruction of time. All of our segments sound very negative, don't they? But the destruction of time is where we look at what's missing, what's come back, what are the rumors, and what are some of our favorite stories about missing episodes. And to wind up this series of the Who Report, I thought I would look at probably my favorite recovery from the Hartnell years, and that is the Day of Armageddon. And the Day of Armageddon is episode 2 of the Dalek Master Plan. And this is particularly unusual that this came back, because Dalek Master Plan is the one story that was never sold outside the UK, was never repeated, so had no opportunity to ever get tapes turn up in overseas archives and things like that, because it just was never shown anywhere. And yet, after being totally destroyed, we've got 3 episodes of it back. And Day of Armageddon was the last episode that was returned about 15 years ago now, so it's been back for a while. Do you remember this coming back in the news about this being returned?
No, I don't really. I imagine it was exciting at the time. I know it's on the DVD release, isn't it? The
Lost
one
in Time.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. When it came back, this was actually one of my most wanted episodes. I wanted 2 episodes of Doctor Who back more than anything, and that was either this episode or episode 11 of Master Plan, because it had all the weird alien delegates in. And the alien delegates, there's a series of press photos, and that's pretty much it, to the point where there was debate for years and years over which one was named which, because no one even knew who the embodiment of Gris was and who the giant Christmas tree man looking was, and things like that. So it's really rare when there's 100 missing episodes and you really want one of them to come back. One of the ones that you desperately wanted to come back turns up.
Turns
Now,
up.
the story behind this one was a BBC engineer saved them back in the 60s. He basically was an editor and taught people editing and recording and things like that. And they were often given material that was going to be destroyed so they could use it to cut up and edit and things like that. And so he was given it and thought, do you know what? I'd probably like to keep these, and took this in an episode of the Daleks home. So it wasn't just this was discovered, an episode of the Daleks was discovered, but it already existed in the archives. So this sat sometimes hanging on a hook behind his door for decades before he decided to actually look online and see if anyone was interested in it. It was a bit embarrassing for him because he was a BBC technician and he had technically stolen BBC material, so he wasn't sure if he was going to get into trouble returning it. Can you believe the BBC weren't mad at him? They were actually ecstatically happy with him that this episode was returned. And of course, I woke up to when you look on forums every day and they move a page at a time, you wake up and you went to bed and it was like 5 pages of discussion. And you wake up the next day and there's 30 pages of discussion. You know that something important has happened. So I logged on to the missing episode forum, and it had moved along at a rapid rate, and I was seeing text and PMs. They found an episode of Dalek Master Plan, so it was quite exciting. This is also one of those episodes, I don't know how you feel about it, but it really does stand up to watching now as a piece of amazing television. In fact, it's one of my favorite episodes of the Hartnell years. It just looks so rich, has so much stuff going in. The acting is fantastic, and it has, as we've highlighted here, the only appearance of Adrian Hill as Katerina, who was only the Doctor's companion for a few episodes. She was a handmaiden from Troy who joined in the Mythmakers and then was killed off in the Dalek Master Plan a couple of episodes later. And the other historical thing to bring up about it, it was also Nicholas Courtney's first appearance in Doctor Who, not as the Brigadier, but as Brett Vion. And so he was the only actor to appear alongside every one of the classic Doctors up till the series ended in '89.
What do you think of the chances are of us finding the rest of the episodes?
Well, I hear stuff about this all the time. The Dalek Master Plan was sent to Australia and wasn't shown here because the censors reviewed it and said it was basically an adult, and it couldn't be shown as part of the Doctor Who run. And at the time, Doctor Who couldn't be shown later. The ABC said it had to be cut down and shown as a children's program. I mean, later in the 70s, they did show Brain of Morbius and I think Deadly Assassin later in the night because they were rated AO rather than G. But at the time with Master Plan, they demanded the censors edit it down to a content what could be shown on kids' TV. And I think the censors had 2 passes at editing it and then said, when they had taken the bits out that they needed to take out for it to be shown, the story didn't make sense anymore. So the interesting thing about the Dalek Master Plan, for years and years and years, there have been rumors that it might exist in some secret censor vault or censor archive and not have been sent back to the BBC. I have heard on various occasions rumors that they have located it. It might have gone back. It's trapped in some weird archive that there's legal issues to getting out. So even though it wasn't sold overseas, it's one of those that could mysteriously materialize at some point and go back. Who knows? We love when there's a missing episode recovery, and there hasn't been one for nearly 10 years, so we're just about due.
We're due one, aren't we? Yes.
we just by the law of averages, we're due pretty soon. These are some of the aliens from Dalek Master Plan. For better or for worse, I think they're fantastic. Some of them look a bit dated and weird now. I do love the chop chick man on the end there, who looks like a giant chop chip cookie. And when he walks, he had a very unique way of walking. This was, for me, pure television magic when it was returned, and I saw those clips for the first time. And I did see the clips on ABC television. It was big enough news to make the news worldwide, or I guess wherever Doctor Who was shown.
Did the one thing with that story though, some of those alien delegates changed slightly between the first episode that they were in,
the
Mission to the
Dalek
Unknown.
the Mission to the Unknown and Dalek Master Plan. They had different actors and basically the same costume, but different makeup on them and things like that. I guess no one expected back then to them ever be repeated or put on DVD so people could scrutinize it. So it really didn't matter.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered so much. And you're right. They would never have thought that we'd be going back and looking at them and scrutinizing them like we do.
And that happens anyway. I mean, in the Star Wars movies, you've got Mass Amida played by one actor in one movie, and the next it's a different actor, and it's an alien. It doesn't matter. I think it's only the really hardcore fans who go, "Hang on a second, his nose is slightly different," or something like that. The other thing which I have seen myself when Web of Fear came back, but a lovely story about this. This came out pretty quick. It was discovered, and within a year they released the episode on Lost in Time. They also released it. You can see on the right there was single episodes released on DVD as a special bonus in the Sun paper in England. And I read a really fantastic story where someone who was a Doctor Who fan but had kind of, wasn't as a fanatic as he used to be, got a copy of The Sun with Day of Armageddon, thinking, this isn't one of the 2 episodes of Dalek Master Plan that's meant to exist. And so he didn't know it had been recovered. And then to get a missing episode as a freebie on the front cover of The Sun really shows the difference in attitude between the junking and no one wants to watch it in the 60s to the national newspaper is whacking it out and you're getting it for free with your Sun subscription, which is crazy as well. The one story I have, which is to do with missing episodes in the shop, when Web of Fear was discovered about 10 years ago, I put it on in the shop and was running it quite a lot over and over because I was just so shocked it was back. And a guy came in and he said, "Oh, Web of Fear episode 1, that's one of my favorite missing episodes ever." And then he's looking and he goes, "This isn't episode 1." And he's like, "What is this?" I said, "They recovered all of it apart from, episode 3." And he burst into tears in the shop, which is quite an amazing thing that discovering, lost television can do to someone. And he said to me, "Where is it available?" I said, it's in JB Hi-Fi. And he basically said, "Oh, I've got to go," and just left to go and buy Web of Fear. So it really does show the connection that nostalgia and episodes from people's childhood have with them as adults.
Would he have seen that as a child, do you think? He would remember
He did.
watching it?
Yeah, he did. He didn't. He had seen it as a child and wish he could see it again, and never thought he'd ever be able to. There are 96 missing episodes at the moment. Hopefully, they're all out there. Who knows? So yeah. We're moving on from the destruction of time to the Braxiatel collection. The Braxiatel collection is a group that I run on Facebook, which just looks at just every aspect of Doctor Who collectible. And we just have discussions and themes and topics, and sometimes some interesting and new merchandise I've never seen pops up, and it's always great. So this week we're having a look at some more Australian merchandise, and we're starting off with the Prime Computers campaign. Now, the Prime Computers campaign was an interesting one. It was an Australian campaign for Prime Computers. It was basically ran over 2 years, and they had 2 different lots of ads for it. There's the Step into the 80s one and the On Through the 80s one. And there was actually publicity material. Do you remember the ads or anything about the Prime Computers campaign, Greg?
Yeah, I have a vague memory of them for sure. I really wish I had got hold of some of those posters, which I think you've got 1 or 2. I remember they were quite. I think they were quite cute. I think they were quite good.
They were obviously filmed when Lala and Tom Baker were very into each other and in love. It was like the chemistry on the ads, which is basically ad-libbed, is really lovely. My memory of Prime Computers is they had a wall in our computer room where they had like thousands of it seemed like thousands, it's probably 30 or 40 of the postcards stapled to the wall. And so one lunchtime, it was in the next to the library, I went in and covertly took all the posters off the wall. And even though they had staples in, I took them to the Doctor Who Club and sold them for 50 cents each. made quite a bundle. And it took me a while, to find ones that didn't have staples on. But yeah, I've had the different cards and poster through the years as well. But there are a few interesting pieces that people might not know existed. And during the Prime Computers campaign, there was also a promotional T-shirt put out, and I've seen it on eBay. The one that pictured in the middle is one on eBay. And I think it's the only one I've ever seen for sale. And that went for a substantial amount. I think it went for 500 US for a T-shirt. And at the time, this made a few people scratch their heads, because even in Australia, people did not remember seeing this piece of merchandise. And looking around on the net, it's not a huge picture, but I did find a picture, an old family picture. And everyone's looking at the cockatoos, but the kid in the picture with the cockatoos is actually wearing the Prime Computers T-shirt, and that was a photo from the 80s. So that did confirm that the one that was sold on eBay wasn't a fake, and I believe it was given out at the Canberra Festival. And the Canberra Festival in the 80s had a big Prime Computers Clever Prime. Don't patronize me, Doctor. That's from the adverts. Prime Computers had a booth at the Canberra Festival, and apparently we're giving out balloons, pins, T-shirts, badges, posters, and all that kind of thing. Now, I've never found any of the pins or badges. There was a paperclip that they gave out as well, and that's the Prime paperclip underneath it. And though it was from the Doctor Who campaign, it unfortunately doesn't have any Doctor Who on it. So if you want a full complement of Prime Computers Doctor Who campaign, you've got to track down the T-shirt and the paperclip as well.
I guess with the T-shirt, of course, one could whip one up and make a facsimile, shall we say, of that quite easily, probably.
Well, they put the badge, like the tag of the T-shirt in the auction, so you would have to find or fake the label as well. But there are people out there that would probably do that for $500 US. But there you go. We do see fakes in the community sometimes, and it's one of those things we frown upon. The other news this week, which is interesting, the illustrated hardback edition of Doctor Who in an exciting adventure of the Daleks, and the Daleks as they've called it on the new edition, has been released. And this is fantastic, because Doctor Who and the Daleks was the very first Doctor Who book published in 1964, and it has been in and out of print for 60 years, and it's regenerated into a new hardback illustrated edition. Have you had your eye on this or seen the news about this, Greg?
I certainly have my eye on that. I think it's not available in Australia yet, is it?
No, I think it's just come out in the UK, and if you're on Amazon or whatever, you could probably order it from overseas. I probably will wait until they turn up locally, just to avoid the horrendous shipping costs.
Yeah, but no, I'm definitely interested in this. Don't those illustrations look lovely?
They do, and I think it is one of those things where Doctor Who has passed into that sort of pantheon of famous fiction, where Harry Potter got the oversized illustrated editions, and some other famous books. The one I like the most, I really like the picture of the TARDIS there, which is in a pink background, and I do wonder if they did that as a homage to the first edition of the book, which was, of course, bright pink color. It's probably just me imagining or putting too much into it. I do wonder, though, if this is popular, are we looking forward to 150 of these books that come out every 6 months and will keep us broke till the end of time?
Yeah, well, maybe if they do. Was it the Zabi and the Crusade were the other two?
The next ones.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if they release them in publication order, so did that and then jump forward to the Autons and the cave monsters and stuff like that, I'd really love that. That'd be fantastic. What I really wouldn't like is if they just decided to do the ones they considered highlights for each Doctor and then stopped it at about 6 volumes or something like that. That would seem like a bit of a money-making cash cow for me. We'll see how that line goes. It is one of those things, people love collecting series, and if that's the first of a new series, I can see it being quite successful the way this one has been received.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely be interested in continuing to get them if they do produce them. Yeah.
So we're moving away from the Braxiatel collection to Mastering eBay, which is another collecting segment of our show, and this looks more specifically on the pricing and the things that have appeared on eBay over the last week. And there has been some interesting stuff show up. I don't know if you do a lot of scouring eBay, but I do. This is a very, very interesting item. I have never owned one of these. This is one of my wish list items, and it's one of the Sugar Smacks badges from the 70s that had the promotion for Doctor Who, and more specifically collecting John Pertwee badges. There's a series of 6 badges, and I've had all the badges before. Really, really hard to get any of the cereal boxes from this material. I think I've seen 2 in Australia in different collections, so they are out there. Unfortunately, I've never had one. Do you have one in your collection, Greg?
If only. I also collect a bit of cereal stuff anyway, so this would be a nice crossover with my hobbies. But no, I don't have any of this, unfortunately. But indeed, it would be nice to have.
It only went for £570, so you're only looking at about $1,000 to get one. So not too bad, but yeah,
a bit out of my price range.
Yeah, it was out of my price range too, unfortunately. But there we go. It's a nice piece to turn up, and I think that is a new record. I think I've seen one go for that much before. The last one I saw, I think, went for about $800. So the price is slowly going up on them.
Yeah, I imagine they'll just be harder and harder to find, so they'll always be high price.
Now, this is a really interesting piece. This is a signed first day cover that's got multiple signatures by the Doctor. And this is an interesting piece because I have seen this piece come up before in the past, and different forums and experts on different forums judged that some of the autographs were possibly fakes. And I guess it's one of those things, when you buy stuff on eBay, you've got to be very careful and do your research. And ultimately, you've got to be happy with what you're buying, because I'm pretty sure if this person who bought this at this price got online and said, look at the amazing item that I've got, there would be people who congratulated them, but there would also be people who would say, this is a fake, much like the Mona Lisa in City of Death. Interestingly, the last time I saw this first day cover, I don't think it had the Tom Baker autograph on. And I do think the Tom Baker one looks legit. So I think in the last time it changed hands on eBay, the person who had it, or somewhere between the last time it was sold and resold, has gone and met Tom Baker and got that put on it. And indeed, you can see the older autographs, which are William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, are all in ballpoint or pen, which you would expect from autographs in that era. And then the Tom Baker one is more in a Sharpie or a black pen, which is obviously a newer autograph. The concerns that people had the last time this was sold, which was probably about 4 years ago, was William Hartnell, by this stage in his life, wasn't really signing or doing much anymore, and most of his correspondence was done by his wife, and any of the correspondence by him was obviously quite weak and quite, an old man who was not able to do much. And this one seems like a really nice version of the William Hartnell autograph, not the Heather Hartnell signing for her husband one. And the other one on there was John Pertwee has a very big flamboyant autograph, and it kind of looks very little like the ones that are on record. So if you're buying stuff on eBay, I'd probably always avoid autographs. I only get stuff pretty much that I've got myself. Anything else, I just believe is I'm buying it for the item, not the autograph. Do you collect autographs, Greg?
Yeah, no. And I was going to say the same thing. I steer away from autographs, I think, unless there's some way to prove that it's legitimate. I'm not really interested.
Yeah. So for me, autographs are a nice way to remember a moment of meeting an actor at a convention. They are nice to have an autographed item in the collection, but they're not something with the amount of forgeries out there that I chase down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much of an autograph collection at all, but I've got the odd Katie Manning, for example, in Target books, that sort of thing. I got them myself, so I know they're legitimate.
Yeah. So I think me too. They're the type of things I get just from meeting the actress. This is an interesting item. So I've had many of the talking Daleks. The Palitoy ones from the 60s came in 3 different color variants. There was the red and black one, which is probably the most common. There's the blue and silver one, which is also pretty common. And then there's the silver and black one, which is this one, which is not common at all, and is quite hard to get. And indeed, this is probably the nicest version of this I have ever seen sold on eBay, which is why it went for such a huge price. It's interesting because no one really knows the behind the scenes story of the silver and black Dalek, but I absolutely do. And it's another one of those, I was in the right place in the right time, and I don't know how this happens to me, but there was rumored at one stage to be less than 10 of the silver and black one in existence. And that's not true at all. There's probably hundreds of them because it was a production run, but a very limited one. And I was in Hong Kong. And I was actually in Hong Kong when Hong Kong handed back to China. And I was over there because basically flights got so cheap, everyone thought the Chinese army was going to march into Hong Kong and make it communist instantly. So it was basically going over for a couple of $100 with all accommodation included because they just could not get anyone to visit there. And do you know what? As a toy dealer, I was like, well, I'm going to go over because they've got all these commemorative Star Wars figures and things like that. And I went to a toy fair there, and I actually found one of these silver and black Daleks, but it was a shell of one, and it didn't have the base in it, and it didn't have the eye stalk or the attachments. And I asked the guy who I bought it off what was the deal, and he had said he worked at the Tommy factory in Hong Kong and remembered this quite well. They had done the production of the Daleks in Palitoys in England, and then midway through the production, I guess at the end of the 70s, it had become more economical to produce them in Hong Kong in the Tommy factory. And they'd got the machines there, and to calibrate them, they'd made the silver Daleks, and then they put them through the paint masker, and they just used black paint. And he said the one I was buying was a defect, and it was absolutely right, because when I got home and tried to put the base in, for some reason it didn't fit. So it obviously was a defect. And he said that they produced however many until they got it right and finished the run of the plastic, and the ones that were correct and could be used and have the base placed in them were then painted up with the black balls and sent to the UK. So rather than being just less than 10, it was the end of a test production run, a test shots that got released into the actual market. So I have heard that at the Longleat exhibition, which was in 83, all the ones there, or a couple of the ones there, were this variant. It had fans opening all the boxes to see which ones, which makes sense because the fan lore on this is it was the original ones and then they changed it pretty quick, but it wasn't. It would have been the ones right at the end of the run where Tommy were doing a production run in Hong Kong. So there's a little exclusive fact there from the Who report that not a lot of Doctor Who collectors know about the Palitoy silver and black Dalek.
And you're right, you were in the right place at the right time, and at Hong Kong, no less. So
it happens. It happens. It's weird, but it happens. So this is what we were talking about earlier, and this is some of the proof about what the crazy prices we were saying with the last issue of the magazine. Now, the one that I have seen sell for the most, and it is a bid. It isn't like someone bought it at a crazy buy. Now, there's more than one person that's bidded up to this, was £87, which by the time you land it here, you're looking probably at about $180 for Doctor Who magazine, and that is a chunk of change for just the current issue of Doctor Who magazine. There are a couple of auctions there where people have got it for cheaper. The cheapest one I could still find was probably about £20, and they are going well above the cover price. But I think the master's advice on this one is do not get caught up in this this week and when it's sold out, because there will be a leveling out of the price when the demand goes down. This has happened to me. I don't get Doctor Who magazine anymore, and once in a while there will be a particularly good issue that I decide I need to get. And the last one was they did a Tom Baker special that had reproductions of Weet-Bix cards and things like that in, and it sold out instantly. And within a week, it was going for like £40-50. And I said, well, I'm not going to pay that for it. And then I remembered about it about a year later, and someone put one up on a bid in auction, and I think I got it for £3. So it's one of those things. Don't get caught up in the excitement at the time. You're bound to overpay. Have you ever had that situation where you've missed something and then you've had to pay over the odds for it?
Look, that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes you do miss out if you're not careful. But you're right. I get the feeling with these magazines. Yeah. Well, look, us here in Australia, we're probably lucky because we can be fairly sure they're going to turn up in a few months' time anyway. So maybe we'll get them then and sell them back to people in the UK who are still scrabbling for them.
You read my mind. What I do actually think when we get them in 3 months, all the hoo-ha will have been forgotten. So I don't even think people will go around and be getting them to scalp. I think it will have leveled out by then. So you might go and buy 5 from your local news agents and get stuck with all of them. It was like that with the comic reprint Dalek, and they still do go for a lot. So there is an exception for the rule. Generally, if you can get them at the cover price when they come out, you're not going to lose too much. So if you want something, try and get it when it comes out. If it sells out, do not buy it in the next 2 weeks, because that's generally when it hits the peak, and then it'll level out and you'll get it at a fairer price maybe 6 months later. So that's the master's tip for this episode of Mastering eBay.
And a good tip it is too.
And last week we ran out of time, and we're getting to the end of the show now, but we've still got time for our if Doctor Who in the 60s was filmed in colour. And this is where we take some of the black and white episodes and colorise them. Some people really hate this, and some people think it looks fantastic. I'm in the boat that the black and white ones will always exist, so why not have a look at what they might look like in colour, because no one can take away the original versions.
So are those Daleks there your idea for maybe the new Daleks that we're going to see?
I hope so. Aqua and mauve. It's almost like the first edition of the Apple computers, isn't it? There we go. This week we are looking at the Mythmakers, which is notorious for being totally lost and not having much audio, much visual material at all. And so finding pictures for this one was quite challenging, and there's a few interesting shots here. As the Mythmakers, I don't really recall much of the story. I remember the book being particularly good because it was a bit funny, and Donald Cotton did a good job of injecting Doctor Who comedy into Doctor Who. Indeed, there was an episode of the book, a chapter called "Is There a Doctor in the Horse?" And there was a lot of that kind of witty humour that appeals to us who like Dad's humour kind of thing. The Mythmakers was, as we spoke about earlier, the story between Mission to the Unknown and Dalek Master Plan. So between these two Dalek epics, you had a historical set in Troy with the Trojan horse. You had Vicky, the Doctor's companion at the time, leaving, and it was Stephen, one of his getting to the end of his era as well. I guess we still had all the Dodo stuff to go through too. The soundtrack ain't bad. It is quite a good one. As I said, I do remember it being a good story. I just don't remember much about it. So here's some of the pictures from the story, and we can see it is a traditional BBC costume drama, and these are often quite good because instead of having to rely on the Doctor Who budget to buy and design new things, they can actually go into their own prop and wardrobe store and pull things out. So if you've ever listened to any of the stories or watched the ones from that era, often stuff like the Aztecs or this one will look a bit better than the average one. The color pictures from Marco Polo look absolutely amazing, again, because they haven't had to build stuff from scratch. They've gone into the BBC, departments that had that stuff already existing for drama. Do you remember much about the Mythmakers?
No, well, I'm similar to you. I've never been a big fan of the historicals, so they tend to be the last ones that I'll look at or read or listen to. But yeah, no, just at the moment, I couldn't really tell you what the story was, other than obviously it's got the Trojan horse in it.
This picture is really interesting. That's a bit of a hot kiss for Doctor Who. Like most of the time in 60s and 70s Doctor Who, you didn't even have people hug or even hold hands. So that would have been a bit of an interesting end to the episode when Vicky left, there's just been news come out about this where apparently William Hartnell was ropeable, and so was Maureen O'Brien, because she didn't even know that she was leaving Doctor Who till she read the episode, and it got to episode 4 and she was written out. And William Hartnell, he really adored her as an actress and got along with her really well. So I don't know if that was some of the politics going on behind the scenes because they wanted to oust Hartnell as well. But it is an interesting episode to see in colour, and I really, truly hope that one day some of the episodes from that actually exist so we can experience them on video and DVD rather than the reconstructions.
Indeed.
Now,
and those colorizations you just showed look really good, I thought, too. So yeah, very good.
Yeah, thanks. I've enjoyed doing them. We're just about at the end of the show. Now, there's one thing we have to talk about before we wrap up for the night, and that is the Sci-Fi Zone dinner that we're doing, a Christmas get-together at the Matthew Flinders Hotel. So all the shows on the Sci-Fi Zone, there's Rip It Off the Card and DNA Reviews and a couple of other ones. We get asked from time to time, why don't you do a live show? Why don't you do a meetup? What we've decided to do, we're going to the Matthew Flinders. We're going to book a table. Anyone who wants to come along is invited. Anyone can come. You just have to let us know so we have the numbers. Everybody's paying for themselves. We'll be paying for ourselves. We'll definitely be there. There's already about 10 people who said they're coming. It's on the 17th of December, which I think is a Saturday, and it's going to be at 7 p.m. So Saturday night, Dags and I will probably be in the shop, finish up, and then come over for dinner for everyone. The Vial has confirmed he'll be there for anyone who loves the Vial file. Greg King is popping out of his giant cracker, and he is going to make an appearance too. So we're inviting anyone who would like to be there that night.
No,
Bob's in.
It'll be a good evening.
There we go. So just let everybody, let me and Dags know so we can get an idea of numbers, and we'll see you there. It should be, and Mark's in too. So it looks like, oh, poor Dags. It's going to be a Doctor Who heavy evening, I think. So we've got that happening. We are at 9 o'clock. We thank everybody who's watched us. We've really enjoyed nattering on about Doctor Who. We hope you've enjoyed it too. Do you have anything you wanted to say before we sign off, Greg?
No, just wanted, other than to say that it's been a great series. So thank you, Aaron, for doing what you're doing. And I've had fun, and I hope everyone else that's been watching has been enjoying it as well.
Me too. And I'd like just to thank Greg for being on it as co-host with me, and just for being a great help and support over the show. So thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully we'll see you before Christmas. If not, hope you enjoyed Doctor Who this year and being the show that we've produced. I think that's about it. So I hope everybody has a great night.
Goodbye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.